So they say diversity is being invited to the party, and then inclusion is us to dance.
Yeah, hello and welcome to Let's Tech Pod. My name is Henrik and the company doing this is Codic Consulting and Codic Education. And today I'm here with Anali Guzman Molina, who's the founder and CEO of Emigreat. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Henrik. How are you?
I'm good actually. Good to be here. And the topic today is around integration and employment, and here in Gothenburg region mostly, I guess. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and why you want to start up Emigreat?
This might be a long story, so I'm going to try to keep it short. So I'm originally from Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
I came to Sweden in 2015 to study a master in Chalmers in international project management. In Chalmers, I come from a background that is architecture, and I decided that I wanted to move from architecture and go into more project management, but project management in IT. So I began taking courses about UX research and sustainable developments and stakeholder management and so on. When I finished my education, it was really hard for me to find a job.
How was your first experience moving here, since that's kind of what we're talking about, your own first experience?
It was rather easy, I would say. I did have to call the university admissions at 3 a.m. for a week because they only were open at 11.
Okay.
But coming as a student was quite straightforward. And I got accepted into Chalmers. I received a full ride and a scholarship from Chalmers called William Chalmers. And basically, I arrived into Sweden the 22nd of August, and it was raining the whole week, and it was a welcome to Gothenburg.
What a memory you have.
Yes, it was quite impacting.
So you had a good, realistic first experience with rain all day, all week, yeah?
Completely. And in that moment, I was living in USA before I moved to Sweden. And the process was that I was living in California. I had to go to Washington, D.C. to actually get my card, my residence permit card, to be able to travel to Sweden. But besides that, I think that everything was quite interesting. It was really, I was very excited, young and fresh in Sweden.
Yeah.
And also coming...
Around what age did you move here?
I was, I'm like 23, 24.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost 24. So 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And basically, I started the course. The course was, because it was international project management, it was a really good mix, half and half of Swedish that were local students, and also include like those who come from outside Chalmers University. And there was also like half of the class was international. So it was a quite diverse group.
Was it what you expected beforehand?
It was, I think that it was different from what I expected, but I think to the best, not to the worst. Yes, the courses was very connected to how do you work with project psychology? How do you deal with international projects in terms of right now we are going into globalization and you are thinking about maybe you have team members in different places on the world.
Yeah.
And that's actually...
very relevant right now, yeah?
Yeah, and it was really relevant. I remember my first paper I actually did about how to build trust and motivation in virtual teams. Yeah. And that was 2015. There was no corona. So yeah, I also was part of like Chalmers Students for Sustainability. I was part of I was involved in all the things possible, it was time for those part. And then that kind of involvement, that is when I started working with social integration and on social inclusion. Yeah. Social inclusion is a really big topic and we can discuss it, but you have to...
Yeah, what can happen if you don't work with social inclusion, like in your experience from Chalmers and welcoming people?
So I'm going to tell you what happened that got me to work on that.
Yeah.
So I was, the class that I was coming from, it was a very diverse class, right? So half locals and half internationals. And because of that, and everybody that was going to that master was in an international mindset, we always were very cohesive. And you could see the results in our reports and in our grades, how we presented. Everything was very like cohesiveness. But then I took a course in another department where the ratio was 10 to 90. So there were 90 locals.
Okay.
And then 10% internationals. What happened was that when there was time to do groups, there were two occasions. One was the teacher did them, and then he forced one international to each of the group. And there was always like this part about the international had to match the work habits and everything of the other 90%. And then the other one where everybody could choose which team to make. It was like all the locals were together and the international were all together.
Why do you think that is?
It's part about conducts, and it's part about how comfortable people are, and it's part about what it means to be inclusive. A lot of people talk about integration, and integration was when I discuss integration is that when you can be part of a society, that's integration. So there are things that makes you put there, and it's probably like what the teacher was trying to do when he put one international in each team. The inclusion is when you actually are part of the team in the terms of everybody reach like a middle ground. So they reach an agreement into this is my way of working and this is my way of working, and then we're going to put together a way to work forward together.
As a team.
As a team. And that's the big difference into when we discuss about inclusion. So social inclusion, a lot of people are now working towards diversity. And this diversity, I know that I'm going way out of subject from the university,
that's good, yeah.
But diversity, diverse teams and diverse companies are performing better all over the world. McKinsey did a report that 25% are more likely to be more profitable than the rest of the market. So that means that you need diversity, and diversity can come from different perspectives. It can come from genders, it can come from ethnicity, but also for social. So you can be two people from Gothenburg to have different cultures, because they have different mindsets and they have different experiences. So that's also where diversity comes into play. And when you talk about, they always have this saying. So they say diversity is being invited to the party, and then inclusion is asked to dance. But we have been like discussing about this subject, and for us, or what we have come into the conclusion as a team in the company is that inclusion is also being part of the party committee. You know? So it's being part of dancing, but also being part of the organizing. So that's what we had to begin seeing inclusion, and then we have to aim for a society that is more inclusive than integrated.
But if we return to that experiment or those different way of dividing into teams you said before, where you either force one international or not, what was your take back from that? What was the learning?
So basically what happened was that when those teams were made, the results of the projects were completely different. So, for example, like some of the projects were with a Swedish company, and those who were only internationals, they could not get any company. Therefore, they were missing that part in the report. And another ones was that it was very sidelining. So we were trying to do internationalization. So the mindset was connected to what we think is normal. So what we think normal, like here in Sweden, is quite normal to be able to talk with an authority, but maybe in other places in the world it's not. So that kind of perspective begin to be demonstrated based on the teams with the different, let's say, configurations.
But it sounds a little bit like, if I understand it correctly, that both the one where you forced the selection and the one where you didn't force, none of them worked really well.
No.
So how do you get people involved in the organizing committee? I mean, what should the teacher have done?
The teacher itself, we think that is something that should not be forced. If I told you an experience based on the same program, the one that was 50-50, they actually had a teacher who took the time to make everybody know each other. So even if you were coming internationally or locally, you had a day where it was a kickoff, and then everybody got to talk about themselves. There was like a speed friendly, where everybody was discussing with each other.
And this was before any team division then?
Before any team division. And then they will say, okay, now switch and then learn. And then he also actually paired us in 2 people, one local and one international, and that was forced, let's say, but then it was to talk about each other's life.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of activities that it can be done to actually make the team feel ready to start performing as a diverse team and not as a segmented team. Mm-hmm. But that always has to start in the beginning of the process, and this is kind of what they call the onboarding in any company.
Yeah, so the onboarding is super crucial to get people involved in and integrated and included.
Exactly, and we see onboarding and just as the part about getting into the job, what you have to do, the work culture, and then some tips and tricks. That's what onboarding is most of the time. I did my master thesis about onboarding, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. And I think that Emigreat was the end of all my life. It has been coming to this point.
Yeah. So if we go into Emigreat, what is a normal work day for you there?
Do you want me to start saying a little bit about what Emigreat is?
Yeah, let's do that.
So Emigreat is actually an onboarding for countries.
Yeah.
So if we want to have it like in one sentence, it's an onboarding for countries. It's a software that works as your advisor and as your assistant. And it's an all-in-one platform. And we say that it's an advisor because it will tell you what, when, and how to do it. Mm. And it's an assistant because it will do things for you. And we call it an all-in-one platform because it actually connects people in the ecosystem. It connects the service provider, it connects the non-profit organization, it connects the government, but it also connects the company. So every person that is part of the ecosystem of an immigrant going to a new place is going to be part of the software itself. So
what this is like an app and you register there?
Yeah, so we are creating an app. We are actually now going to be releasing our MVP.
Okay, so now it's a website and then it's going to be
it's a web app.
A web app, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So progressive.
Yeah.
And basically what we are, of course, at the beginning we cannot have everything done. It's a startup.
Yeah.
But the aim is that we can create a methodology that can work all over the world. So we are starting in Sweden, and then later on we want to explore other countries as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
So if you're then, let's say you're wanting to move to Sweden, how are you helped by Emigreat?
So when you are going to move to a new country, let's say, the first thing that you do is that you go online and you Google.
Yeah.
Right? You Google, how is going to be this? How is going to be that? What are you going to be doing? And we are switching that a little bit because you can only Google what you know. And for example, insurances and unions is something that in Sweden is very strong, but nowhere in the world it is. So you don't even know to Google about that.
No, that's true. Yeah.
So
many people know that we have high taxes. That I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah. So everybody is like high taxes, but I was like, yeah, but it's high taxes compared to what? So basically what we do is a little bit different. We start with the questions, who you are and where you want to go, or what is your purpose of moving. So when you actually twist around, you begin getting information and getting things to do based on your own profile. So it works a little about like Netflix and recommendations.
Okay, that's nice.
Yeah. So basically basing on your profile and all the milestones that you are going through, you start getting either more information or less information because you don't want to be overwhelmed.
No.
You don't want to read things that doesn't apply to you. So that's what we are creating.
But it's an app, but do you also, for example, help with people's applications, or it's more focused around the web app?
No, we are, so basically, you are able to do everything inside the application, but it will be, for example, creating only one form. It's kind of a smart form. So if you have already put your passport, and then you don't have to say again, what is your name, what is your day of birth.
Because so maybe you're thinking, maybe I'll move to Denmark or Sweden or Norway, and then you can just register some things once.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So it's all based on this information that you reuse through your life, but then what is that you are opening up for the authority when it comes to it.
Yeah.
So that's what the assistant does. And the advisor is the one who tells you, okay, now you're outside of Sweden. Don't worry about getting a personal number because you first have to get your permit, you know.
But is the advisor like a smart, program, or is it a person even?
No, it's a program.
It's a program, yeah.
Yes.
That's how it usually is nowadays. So
yeah.
Can we expect that?
We always have to be saying like it's a virtual assistant and a virtual advisor because everybody thinks it's a person. And
yeah, it could be at some point, yeah.
And actually that's how it works right now. So when you are moving to a new country, if your company can afford it, right, they actually will get a person that assists you. And the problem with this is that it becomes very costly because you are comparing a consultant that has all the knowledge towards helping you. And the people actually moving, more than like around 70% of them are between 18 and 39 years old, which means that one, they might not have 10 years of experience or second, they are not in a seniority role. So those are the ones who are moving the most. And those are the ones who the company might not pay the cost of a relocation expert. So what we are building is an expert system. Yeah.
Nice. I understand the idea.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah, you understand it.
Well, how can an organization, if you're listening to this and you're part of an organization that wants to employ someone from abroad, how can they be assisted by a platform?
So basically, there is something that is what is at the moment and what we are moving forward. At the moment is that we are trying, there are two parts in the platform, the assessment, can I hire an international? A lot of small companies or startups, they don't even know if they can or they don't know how to start.
Yeah, there's always this, let's say, ambiguity towards choosing someone from abroad because sometimes it can take a long time, but I have a feeling that many companies and organizations are a bit too afraid to choose someone from abroad because especially like if it's within EU, it's actually super easy.
Yeah.
You can start working immediately and you just have to, do some small applications and forms. But of course, from abroad outside of EU, it's a little bit more difficult, but yeah.
The thing is that this is kind of what is our core values. If you actually begin removing those barriers, then the company, as they have their web application as an advisor and assistant, they will be okay hiring somebody from abroad. Doesn't matter if they are from outside EU or from EU, because also from EU, even they can start working right away. Sometimes they are like getting a bank account is hard for them to get paid, or
that's true, yeah.
Getting a personal number. How do I do those things? So we want to remove those barriers, so it actually makes easier to hire an international, but also is for the sake of creating more diverse teams, and because a lot of companies, they want to start growing to different places, globalization and so on, but then they don't have insights or they don't have an understanding of those cultures, how they work. So being able to hire somebody from abroad or somebody with an international mindset, because, for example, like in Sweden, they are 20% is foreign born. So there are also already people inside who also are internationals now. It's also kind of, we are dealing one part of the problem. That is the bureaucracy part, and it's also kind of the cultural part. But of course, there is another big part of it, that is how does that person will feel or will perform when they come inside the company. And that's not really a scope or a scope at the moment. In
like the onboarding and all that.
So the onboarding, we are in the onboarding. We are part of the onboarding, but more also in a cultural perspective. So, for example, like why is that Sweden do queues and why is important to make a queue? All those things, like we have discussions, and that's part of like more of an kind of an e-learning, but also. I think the companies themselves, what we are encouraging and connecting to them is service providers who work into the part of now I have an international, how I do retain them, how I make the whole team work cohesive, because it's not only having the person, but it's also how they interact with each other.
Yeah.
And one of the bigger questions is the Swedish or the English, you know?
Yeah, that one is common. You know, we have certainly had customers or companies that we worked with that felt that they could have someone who doesn't speak Swedish, but in the end, we find that many companies prefer someone who speaks Swedish.
Yes.
That's a bit unfortunate, of course, and I don't know, how do you feel about that?
We had a whole discussion in Halmstad because a lot of companies were saying the English is their main language, their corporate language, but they would not hire a person because they were lacking the Swedish language. So right now is something that happens everywhere in the world. I'm not going to tell you. I think that Sweden is a little bit more advanced. If I tell you that everybody speaks English, if you go to Italy or if you go to France or Spain,
it can be even more stingy about that we need to speak the local language.
Yeah, it's going to be hard, but I think that Sweden also had to reflect on how they want to grow because, for example, Gothenburg is growing quite fast. I always say my city because even if I'm not from Gothenburg, I feel like I'm local to Gothenburg. I say my city is growing and my city is like changing as well. So if we are changing to the speed of that we are doing, we're going to have to be more comfortable and be more international. And we're going to have to be comfortable as well to hear more English being spoken.
Yeah.
So we have to really evaluate as a company, like what is important. And also like most of the internationals are also willing to learn Swedish. And there is SFE and all these things. But for example, you say, okay, we're going to do Swedish fika and then trying to do a like live fika. We have another case studies with other companies have been, for example, like language cafes. So then they have fikas in different languages. In my own Emigreat, we have lunches in Swedish, which is challenging for me because I'm the one learning Swedish still.
Yeah. Okay.
But half of the team speaks Swedish and other half wants to learn Swedish. So we do it in Swedish.
Yeah, that's really good. And I mean, for us, when we started Software Skills, the first company I started doing recruitment in IT, then one of the ideas was to be good at hiring people abroad and get them here. And then we also had this idea with code tests and all that. But sadly, what we found was that many companies were not so into both the risk that would take a long time, but also to find people that didn't speak Swedish. So that's something we always try to be pushing for, but it's actually pretty difficult as a recruitment company. And I mean, now today in Codic, we have several people who, well, some don't know Swedish so well, and some know it partially, and some know it better. And we have like a scale there, and we're going to do a Swedish course that starts, I think, next week to get them together and have a teacher who, teaches them Swedish to get. So because many people want it, and then there is different opportunities like SFE and all that, but then you need sometimes a little bit kick in the back and get it started, and
and I want to say that we have to really reflect the language in the part of the inclusion, because a big company here in Sweden that I'm not going to say the name, but everybody knows, with automotive, is very big in hiring internationals, right?
Yeah.
But if you have a team that have 10 people and then one person that doesn't speak Swedish comes in, the person feels alienated, right? Because it's such a big, it's the 90-10.
It's about the social inclusion thing that you don't really want to have to be a problem, feel that you're a problem for anyone else. And
you don't want to feel like it's a problem, and then also maybe you don't feel that you can contribute. So in a team of 5, that is normally the size of the team, if there are 4 Swedish speakers and 1 English speaker, then the English speaker will feel alienated, and then the team will not perform with that skill. Yeah. Or the person will feel like they need to leave. And that's happening a lot. There is a lot of problems right now connected to retaining the hire and the talent shortage. So I think that we have to really evaluate the teams in the smaller size. Even us as a startup, we say, if you are a startup and you have let's not go in diversity in ethnics, but let's talk about gender diversity. If you have 4 males and then 1 female comes in, there will always be also a power imbalance.
Yeah.
So we have to start like, okay, when we are recruiting this team, the third person, we have to ask that questions. Are we being diverse also in our recruit? And then those barriers, I'm trying to take out the barrier of the things that you don't like doing. That is the bureaucracy. So that doesn't come as a factor for not hiring it. Mm-hmm. So then you say, okay, I'm gonna treat everybody equally until who is the best for the position.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like where we want to go.
That's kind of even in the law also. So but that's interesting. So we are getting towards the end here, but we just quickly address a hot debate in Sweden, which is integration, and it's a bit related. I mean, there are people in Sweden that are afraid of losing their jobs to workers from abroad, and so sadly, what do you say to that line of argument?
I think that we have to really evaluate which jobs are we discussing about.
Yeah.
There is a talent shortage. 76% of the companies in Sweden, they are saying that they cannot find the skills that they need. They are a mismatch with those skills who are inside Sweden, okay? Because there's also the skills like the graduates of universities who are not finding jobs as well. So there is a disconnect.
Yeah.
But also, I don't think that for a person from abroad to take a job in Sweden, there is a lot of requirements in terms that they have to be in a list of talent shortage. But if we go into the list of talent shortage, it includes most of the jobs.
Yeah.
So we have to really evaluate is that either we have to reeducate. The unemployment rate has gone down now after COVID, and April they start hiring like crazy.
Absolutely, yeah.
So the unemployment have been going down. So those who are not unemployed, maybe we need to reeducate them for those skills who are needed. I
think it's pretty clear that there's a strong demand for software developers, for example, and we can't train them fast enough.
Exactly. And this is the thing. We cannot train them fast enough, and there are changes in the ecosystem that are happening. For example, like the green steel. The green steel is something that those skills to be trained, it takes 3 years, and it needs to happen now. So they need to bring those people from abroad. That doesn't mean that in 3 years there will be the positions for those who are being trained at the moment. Yeah. So I think that it's not about taking the jobs of another. In reality, there is nobody taking anybody's job. It's that the economy of Sweden is an export economy. So there has to be more people than what it is right now for it to grow more. Yeah. And if there is a growth economy, it holds all the aspects. It's not only the IT, but an IT job also generates, let's say, a job for the service, hospitality service, for the finance service. So we have to see how the whole ecosystem works and how is the necessity of the country as a whole. Yeah. And we are right now writing a report about this talent shortage connected to international recruitment, but also recruitment internally from internationals. So I will let you know what happens after that.
Yes. I mean, so this is the Let's Tech pod, and obviously within IT, you can say that economically it's in our interest to try to get more people to move here. And then there's a longer debate, of course, in other fields, of course, also. But and if we go to integration, how do you think Sweden can become better at integration? Or maybe even looking at Gothenburg and your own experience?
I think something that we have reflected in our trajectory with Emigreat is that asylum seekers, and that we have not talked about that as internationals, but asylum seekers have a higher integration than non-asylum seekers. They have a person assigned that will be the bodies, that they will help them. They will have like a educational...
What do you mean with higher integration there?
They will have more efforts put into place from the authorities for them to get integrated into society. In terms of, for example, they go to a course that is to teach them about Sweden. They actually go to language courses and so on. So one of the things that we are discussing is that right now what we want to offer is those courses about integration to the Swedish society for work permit holders and also for dependents of the work permit holders, because that's the biggest issue. A lot of people think that is the work permit and the person who's got work permit, but Sweden is one of the top in the world. But what they are lacking on is on the dependents. So if you come to, let's say, if you move to France, let's not say Sweden, and then you are in the job, you are getting yourself like interested in the society, but then your partner is not, then there is a unhappiness in the whole family.
Yeah.
And what we have to also see is that Sweden is not competing with Sweden. Sweden is competing against Estonia, against Canada, against USA for high-skilled talent. So we have to start discussing these topics on inclusion, integration, and the jobs and searchers and so on in the terms of why do we need to change? What things we can do to change. And I started Emigreat, to conclude a little bit about that, is because I didn't want to be just discussing and complaining about the topic. I wanted to make an action towards how to solve this issue and how tech can enable this issue to be solved. So, I think that's
sounds very good.
Yeah.
So maybe a final question. What do you think the future holds in terms of immigration and integration? If we look, 10, 15 years ahead, what do you think the situation will be?
I think that in 10 to 20 years, we're still going to have countries. A lot of people ask me those questions, like, are we going to have one passport? And we're going to have one country and one language? I do not believe so. I think that culturally we are more rich when we have diversity in all cultures. But I think that we're going to have to reevaluate these barriers in terms of countries and in terms of companies, because we are going towards a more globalized world. And right now, 4% of the population is international migrants. So we have to really evaluate this. And I think in 10 or 20 years, people will start choosing where they want to live based on their values. So I moved to Sweden because I like the values about sustainability, about equality, development. So those were the values that I looked for where I wanted to live. So that was my choice. And I think that that's what's going to happen, because when you are when you have a higher education and you, let's say, or you have those skills that are needed, it will be easier to find a job, let's say. But it will be also you deciding where is that I want to go. And I think that that's what I see for the future.
Nice. Thank you very much for coming here, Anali Guzman Molina.
Thank you so much, Henrik. I have a great time.